Dear subscribers of the Digital Concert Hall, welcome to the intermission program today. I'm Emmanuel Pahud and I'm hosting here Hélène Grimaud, our soloist, and Tugan Sokhiev, our conductor, for this intermission program. It's great to have you here. Lots of piano music in this first half of the concert. We have Liszt transcriptions by Holliger. They were written at the end of the 19th century, then arranged by Holliger 100 years later. How does this perspective of 1 century, out of the perspective of now our 21st century, looks for you, Tugan Sokhiev?
I think it's very clever actually to go from Liszt and then through Ravel, and then come back to Holliger, because Holliger is somebody who is our contemporary composer and somebody who is among us today and writes wonderful music, and to take those ideas, and because you have to be really, really careful to how you listen to them and how you really recognize the nuage gris, and it's not exact copy of a piano part. It's you have to be really. It's paraphrase really rather than. But I think the connection from Liszt to Ravel, I think maybe for Hélène makes more sense to do this link in terms of piano music.
Yeah, it is, because I played these Liszt pieces, and it's true what you say, the paraphrase aspect, which is also very clever, because Liszt excelled at that himself. And what I heard of the orchestration of the transcription this morning through the loudspeakers, it's a brilliant one. The colors are really coming through, and it's very suggestive and very, very powerful. So. And
the colors of the orchestra as well. The first movement and the second, which comes very strong and very sometimes aggressive and very rhythmic and strong, and they're so contrasted.
Yeah,
contrasted. Yeah. Which is very often in Liszt as well, in his piano literature, his piano music.
Yeah, it's wonderfully done. And the art of transcription, I think, is a very, very difficult one. There are very few models of the genre, but this could be one, actually. I was very impressed.
We're very lucky to have Holliger coming regularly also to a concert series and playing his own music here with us. And it's true that he's one of these living geniuses who excels both as an instrumentalist and as a conductor, and actually also as a great composer of our times. Therefore, he has an insight in the creative aspect of the composer, and as you were saying, the paraphrase aspect of Liszt, who's the paraphrase composer by excellence, is really the source of inspiration for Holliger, who just transcends this into chords that are probably in the dream, in the harmonics.
Exactly, because the sound is about imagination more than anything else. That's where it starts, and that is very, very also strongly felt in this piece, and how he must have worked with it. You can feel that he heard it before. I mean, I suppose one has to, but it comes across very, very clearly.
But also adding instruments like contrabass clarinet, bass flute.
It's unusual, yeah.
Actually, it's the first time in my life I conduct contrabass clarinet and bass flute. It's when I look, that should look something enormous, huge, and it is quite big actually. Yeah. But they do create this color, very special color, and when 4 flutes played to 5 clarinets or 5 flutes, it's amazing, the color.
Indeed, Holliger is using all these different kind of pipes, long tubes or small tubes, reminding of an organ, and he actually writes in the part like an organ, as Liszt had been writing also in there, and it's indeed using the whole range of instruments that we have available for us now. This would take us actually to the Ravel concerto, also using a lot of exotic instruments that Ravel had brought back in certain ideas and instrumentations from his America trip that he had just before he wrote this concerto, and with some. He wanted to play it himself, but Marguerite Long ended up playing it for him, because he was just so tired of all his very active life that he had at the time in the late 20s. And what do you know about these?
Well, yes, I know that Marguerite Long played a very, very important role in Ravel's life, and she was, of course, sort of pope-like figure, also in French musical education and the sort of embodiment of the French school, with all of its limitations in a way as well. But I have to say I never heard the playing. but everything we know about the playing was that it was extremely clear, extremely precise, and of course this must have suited the piece very, very well in the beginning. So it's a very difficult one actually. I've been working with this for years now, and it's one of the more it's hard to be satisfied with the piece. Somehow it always leaves you wanting more or needing more, and always this fine line between the sort of mechanical aspect of the music, this almost that we were talking about yesterday, it's almost sometimes Petrushka like articulation, ta 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 ta. So something which is very sort of disincarnate, and at the same time you always feel with Ravel, this is of course what I love about this composer, this always this tension, this harmonic tension, this rhythmic tension, something which is always sort of unresolved, and the conflict can be very sort of tiring to handle actually. So you can, you always have this choice. I suppose you could say that of any piece, but with Ravel, it makes it even harder to decide whether you have a more first-degree approach or second-degree approach. And I find myself constantly sort of oscillating, if not vacillating, between the two, and that can be difficult.
You did play this concerto with our orchestra some 10, 12 years ago, together with Claudio Abbado. Now this time together with Tugan Sokhiev, the orchestra has been changing a lot in these years. Probably last time you played, there was a lot of the Karajan era still present. Now there's a lot of the Rattle era present. How would you qualify this evolution or change?
Well, the playing is still outstanding, no question about it. But of course, you feel in the vitality. Not that vitality is necessarily associated with youth. I mean, that's another myth. But I do think that there's something that is more, perhaps more open. That's the first impression. Although whenever it was a long time ago, maybe 10 years, when we did this piece. I remember it was the first season of Guy. I remember you weren't playing because you were on break for solo playing, and I remember already with Guy things seemed already different from what I had experienced with Claudio the first time. So it's, but it seems as if the identity of the orchestra is not changing, and actually for the better. So hopefully there is probably more strong individualities, more idiosyncrasies within the orchestras, and perhaps they're just more, allowed to emerge than they were at one time.
Talking about identity, we could actually be speaking French here, you being French, and Tugan Sokhiev being chief conductor in Toulouse Capital Orchestra now for 4 years. Tell us about this experience now for you.
First time I started in 2005 in Toulouse, officially as a music director, but before I was there already in 2003, and from my very first contact with the orchestra there was something special, and it's one of those things you don't expect. You go somewhere to Toulouse. I've never been to Toulouse, but what is Toulouse? I know there's an orchestra, and you go there and suddenly it happened like that, and you're on the same frequencies, you speak the same language, you understand each other, they feel the same as you, or you feel the same as, so it's one of those rare, seldom moments when you absolutely together. And I have to say it's going very well. I'm now there since 4 years, and I'm very happy with the orchestra. It's really developing, and also the heritage of Michel Plasson, my predecessor, who's been there for 35 years, and who is today one of the the last greatest French conductors. One hand is enough to name all of them today, but he's one of them, and he certainly was one of the biggest advocates for French music. He recorded with his orchestra a lot of music. I mean, on EMI he recorded almost all of it, the ones even which probably don't deserve to be recorded. But a huge anthology of French music is there today. So, but we try to use that heritage and maybe develop different sides of the repertoire: the contemporary music, the Russian music, German music, Italian, and but we never forget that the tradition of a French music is always there. So for me, it's very interesting to compare Ravel with Toulouse Orchestra and Berliner Philharmoniker, because it's so international, Ravel. I mean, it doesn't matter which orchestra plays it, but the music still makes any orchestra to sound it Ravel. It's today like the colors of the piccolo clarinet or the horn or cor anglais. It's the language Ravel, I think, speaks. I mean, you probably have a lot of experience playing with different orchestras. It is Ravel. It's Ravel language, I think.
He did actually, indeed, had a lot of influence for this piece. I hear also a lot of Stravinsky, as you were referring to before, right? In the dryness of certain of the chords in the beginning, and just the way that the voicing is shifting in there, and the rhythmical aspect. At the same time, very jazz influenced, of course, but also a lot of Mozart in the classical writing, and the purity of the lines and the dialogue between the piano and the orchestra in the second movement.
Simplicity.
Really referring to some, and the accompaniment figure. I can hear Mozart's C major concerto also, or I can hear some of the typical Mozart slow movements there with this kind of dialogue.
And the second movement is beautiful. The dialogue between Hélène and you, Emmanuel, the sort of solo flute, and oboe picks up the clarinet, and it's like a flower which keeps sort of unfolding,
and transforming.
It's so simple writing, but it's genius.
Have you heard? I think it's Herbie Hancock starting improvising from from there. He did this with the Orpheus Orchestra.
No, I didn't
maybe some 15 years ago. I think it's an album dedicated to Gershwin, and he kind of takes the Ravel concerto and transposes it into a kind of American, and then opens it up basically with an improvised part in that slow movement to that point.
But I wish it could be longer. I mean, I wish it was longer, the concerto, because it's sort of like 20 minutes and just like, oh, it's gone.
Yes, exactly.
I wish he would write it a bit longer, because it's such a beautiful material and beautiful ideas and beautiful structure. I wish he wrote longer.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's true. Sometimes at the end you all of a sudden have this feeling,
I just warmed up.
What was that?
I just warmed up.
We certainly would want to hear more of it, yes. Certainly, more of it together. Let's move on to this Rachmaninoff Symphony number 2. That we do perform regularly with Russian or conductors from Russian origin. It's a real great standard of the repertoire. I remember Bishkov in the latter Karajan years doing it here, and when he took over the Orchestre de Paris, also starting with this piece over there. For instance, has a lot of interaction between the strings and the woodwinds. I used to think at first it's like a piano concerto with a missing piano, but really working thoroughly on it.
That's
Hélène is there. We can ask you to play tonight, can't we?
Working really thoroughly on it, you realize how complex all the rhythmical intrications and all these these melodies just going one above each other create a kind of rhythmical bounce that is happening there, and it's really not easy to hear in the first reading, but that hopefully the audience will be able to capture in this performance.
Well, that's certainly what I was trying to do, because you're absolutely right, Emmanuel. The contrapunct, he sometimes writes so many lines because he was very, very young, and he started developing, and he started getting his talent was just pouring out of him, and I think he used everything he knew. But apart from his incredible talent to write a melody, because I think Rachmaninoff was the best melodist. You can say that from from all the piano music.
Absolutely.
I mean, he could write a melody, endless melodies, without breathing, without any respiration. You think, where are you going to breathe? And it sort of goes and goes and goes, and it never ends. And it's finally same in the symphony, in the clarinet solo, in the third movement. But we try to sort of separate that this line goes against the strings, the woodwinds go against the brass, and
to define this.
Yeah, exactly. If not, it just gets messy and very thick structure. And he does orchestrate very rich. His orchestration is very rich. It's full of. He loves horns, for example. He never lets them stop. There's always horns. So we have to be careful. But with these beautiful horns, they know when to back off, and when to step in, and of course the strings. The Rachmaninoff strings. It's a very it comes from Russian singing. It comes from, well, I guess for many singing really, but the strings in Rachmaninoff have to be very sustained and very lyrical,
Russian,
yes, and very sort of, continue with a continuation always, but at the same time not very tensed and not very you know.
It has to be transparent at the same
Absolutely,
time, otherwise the textures get
absolutely.
completely...
And
blocked
you
out.
know, that's what the orchestra is doing beautifully, and I'm really looking forward to the symphony and to go. It's a very long symphony, it's a big symphony, and you kind of, the journey is quite long. You go from the first movement to this absolute festive finale, through this scherzo and the most lyrical third movement, and so it's a long journey, but with this orchestra it's great to do this journey.
To you, Hélène Grimaud, thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
to you, Tugan Sokhiev, also very much. Back to you at home, enjoying the digital concert hall. Thank you very much.